All right, let's get our Facebook groups in here before it's officially time to take off with the show here. Got our spinning wheels going. One and two. All right. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. It is Tuesday morning, the 24th of October, and it's time once again for an episode of Broncos for Breakfast. I am Nick Kendell, joined by Scott Kennedy. Scott, quick shout out to you. Thank you so much for holding down the fort while I was gone. You saw me join the chat a few times while I was in the airport or, in the Uber listening on the way, but appreciate you, doing solo. I know those solo shows can be a little bit harder to do because you don't really have the normal breaks in there.
And it's a lot easier to do mid-season, during the
Yeah.
season instead of like July 20th. Can be a little tougher when you're trying to figure out what to do. But the coming off a win and the great community that we have with Broncos for Breakfast make it easy to just chat football with the ladies and gentlemen of Broncos country. So I appreciate everybody for being here and hanging out with me while Nick was gone.
Yeah, it was good. Got to see the family, sister I hadn't seen since her wedding. Hang out with pregnant wife in Rocky Mountain National Park, where we got married there in Estes Park back pre sick bug, as Carl's daughter likes to call it. So yeah, appreciate that, and yeah, a lot to talk about. Broncos of the win. The curse is broken, right? That was my first win I've witnessed in now 10 attempts, so that was fun. And the meet and greet was awesome. I see Jeremy Sean's in the house. It was awesome to sit and talk with him for a bit. Other folks, of course, came as well. Hopefully, folks can come out for the meet and greet in the future. That was my first one, and it really was a lot of fun. We got blessed with a good game and good weather as well, though.
I made an executive decision yesterday as we were talking about Kansas City Chiefs. If the Broncos lose this game, that would end the season, the last chance to play the Chiefs again. The meet and greet will be when the Chiefs come to Denver next year. We've got to put the mojo of the 3-0 undefeated against the streak of the Kansas City Chiefs. So next year, Kansas City Chiefs meet and greet. It's happening. It's happening.
What if it's like,
I don't
January?
care. I said if it's on Christmas frickin' day, it's happening.
Well, we'll
Christmas in
see.
Denver, everybody.
We'll see what Chad has to say about that. Hopefully I can come next year. Obviously, I'll have a son at that point. I don't know if I've shared too much with the world that have a boy coming, but yeah, no, that's a we'll see. It's definitely going to try to get out there again. It was a lot of fun. And let's say hello to some people in the chat as they're starting to come in now. Jeremy Sean comes in. Really nice to talk with you, Jeremy. It says, "Morning, boys. Gang's back together. Feel like it's going to be fines to a 4-game suspension is a little crazy on a questionable penalty. I think they will plead it down to 2 games." So, yeah, I think inevitably with Kareem Jackson. So the big news, I guess, yesterday is that Kareem Jackson, after a violent hit, but shoulder to shoulder, but a violent hit where he looked like, left his feet and ducked his head, is a 4-game suspension. I think he will appeal it, and I think it will get down. Scott, did you hear the one interesting conspiracy with this suspension? You're muted. You're muted.
Sorry, I
After
was
coughing.
coughing. Thank you.
Yep.
Yes, I didn't hear it, but I'm pretty good at guessing
Okay.
conspiracies. So who knows? Maybe they had him do it on purpose so they didn't have to pay him and they wanted PJ Locke in there anyway. Um,
The
that would be on the
judge,
Denver side of things. That would be my first guess at a conspiracy theory.
who divvies out these calls, suspensions, his son is a Green Bay Packer. Is Runyon is he was an offensive lineman for the Michigan Wolverines, drafted by the Packers, and his so the judge who makes these calls is actually maybe has a little bias in there. I don't think he actually does have bias to this, but kind of an interesting little tidbit.
Again, I said it was like a parole violation, or you get probation and you get a suspended sentence. He should have been suspended on that hit on Logan Thomas, flat out.
Mm-hmm.
That one was egregious with a capital E. That was a suspendable offense, and then he got fined like 3 more times. He didn't get ejected. So for me, this was a cumulative effect. Whether you agree with this one or that one, he's obviously doing something wrong. They're not just picking on the guy, and it's pretty easy to figure out. He ducks his head and leads with his helmet on the crown of his helmet on every single tackle he makes. It's dangerous. It's bad football. It's not technically sound. He's knocked out one of his own players doing this. He's lucky he hasn't broken his own damn neck. And I feel like this is a cumulative effect, Jeremy, on this, was that he should have been suspended earlier. He's lucky he wasn't suspended 2 games, and then the next time he does it is 4 games. So him only missing 4 games, I think, is how the judge put it in the write-up, was basically, this is for your actions for the season, not just for this one hit. And I'm not surprised a bit. I'm not surprised at all. Now, when they appeal it, this is what's interesting, Nick. They appeal it to former players. There's 2 former players that will hear it, Derek Brooks and I think James Thrash. What message are they sending if they do accept the appeal and lessen the sentence? What message are they sending to Kareem Jackson, to defensive players, and to the offensive players in which he's headhunting?
I think that any suspension is still sending a message of sorts. I think 4 games. I don't know if there's any precedent to that level of it, and I think they're trying to make him out to be Vontaze Burfict, which I do not think Kareem Jackson is that level of insane trying to break necks out
No,
there.
Vontaze Burfict was clinical. I watched him in high school, and you should have seen him in a 7-on-7. It was like having a rabid dog chained to a meat wagon that was locked up. I mean, he wouldn't allow it. Every once in a while, he'd just say, to hell with it, and he'd throw a forearm at somebody coming across the middle.
Yeah.
I watched him go after Matt Barkley's knee in high school when they were both committed to USC, and they were going to be teammates in 4 months. And he went, I've got it on video somewhere on one of my YouTube channels, takes 3 steps and dives right at his knee as Matt Barkley's falling through. Dirtiest, by far, the dirtiest. That guy was mental. I've said, I think Kareem Jackson, I feel like he's overcompensating a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
He's a corner trying to hang on in the league as a safety, and he's undersized. So he has to do it a little bit harder, a little bit stronger, a little bit faster, a little bit meaner than someone that's got 30 pounds on him playing the same position.
Yeah.
And it's reckless. It is. It's reckless.
I do expect the appeal to come here at some point. I don't think there's any news about that being announced yet. And I think it'll get reduced from 4 games, as Jeremy said, probably down to 2. But, he's on a watch list now. Anything that's close, it's going to be, right back to being suspended. And the Broncos' depth at safety is going to be interesting. The one thing I will say, and following the aftermath of the ejection and the suspension, is that NFL players, not just Broncos, but NFL players have really come to defend this specific hit. This one specifically, which it was shoulder to shoulder. Luke Musgrave did duck his head at the same time. Now, the action from, and I heard you say, and I agree 100%, the action of ducking his head in the lunge would be targeting in college football. Would it be a flagrant 1 or 2? I don't know with that one, but he would be out.
A shoulder to the helmet attacking the guy is, but this isn't college. This is different rules.
Yeah.
But, I think of it like, in soccer, intent doesn't always matter. If it's what happens. And if I go in 2-footed with a cleats up challenge and I win the ball and still clean, I'm making the referee make a decision because the challenge itself is reckless. The way he tackles is reckless. If he doesn't connect in the perfect spot, it's going to be an illegal tackle. It's poor. It's fundamentally poor for one, dangerous and reckless for another, and that's why he keeps getting fined and suspended.
Yeah, and we'll talk about the ramifications of that for the Broncos. But first, we want to say hello to some superstars coming in here. Michael Ronquillo. Michael's just consistently really, really supportive of the show, and we really appreciate you, buddy. He says, good morning, Nick and Scott on Broncos for breakfast. Go Broncos with the orange heart, the blue heart, and the salute. God bless you, Michael. We also got our guy, Mark Schrader. Mark coming in here. Mark, hopefully we can get you out of the meet and greet at some time in the future, because always enjoy talking with you. He says, great to have you both here. Great job solo, Scott. Do appreciate that, Scott. Yeah, you definitely got some days off in the bank after this last week if you need to take them. Of course, we appreciate that. Let's say hello to some more people coming in here. A good morning from Donald Willison Jr. He says, I wanted to thank you for starting my mornings. Well, you're welcome. It's always a lot of fun to hang out and talk a little ball in the morning. Jeremy Sean says, by the way, I'm rocking my Broncos for breakfast t-shirt this morning. I don't think you got many more opportunities for the t-shirt there, Jeremy. I think it's like 38 degrees in the forecast for next Sunday. We got so damn lucky with the weather in that Green Bay game. Really, truly beautiful, beautiful week out there.
It looked gorgeous. The bright, sunny Colorado day, it looked gorgeous out there.
It was really, really pretty. We got lucky. Jamal Killing saying, morning Broncos country, good to see you. David Youngkin coming in talking about Kareem Jackson, saying he has been a repeat offender for this behavior before, so in this case he deserves it. I do think that they will look at the hit specifically though on that last one, and it'll be reduced because I don't think this hit and it by itself would qualify for a suspension. But because the repeat offender thing, but because it came after this single hit, I think this is the one they're going to review more so, and that might end up reducing the sentence. I'm just spitballing. I mean, I don't know
It
exactly
might. You
how the
read it though,
process
and
will
it was
be.
talked about. The write up was all about this is continue to happen.
Yeah,
Happened here when you were suspended, or when you weren't suspended. This is the 5th time you've been fined in 7 games. This was again. I think of it like somebody getting in trouble and getting a suspended sentence. It's like, okay, well, we're gonna suspend you 2 games, but we're, no pun intended, or play on words here. English is fun. You're gonna sit out 2 games, no pay, but we're gonna suspend that sentence. Meaning, if you stay on good behavior, you won't have to do it. That's the way it feels to me.
yeah,
Is okay. Well, you screwed up again. You're getting the 2 that we didn't give you, and now you're getting 2 more.
yeah. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, God, does Kareem Jackson? He must just love football because at this point he's going to be paying the league to play with how much he's been spending, what he's been owed on that relatively cheap contract. But let's say hello to David Youngkin again. Says he's been a repeat offender for this behavior, so he deserves it. Yeah, I also said David's not feeling great. Hope you feel better, David. We got Kevin Gray in the house saying, "Morning, Nick and Scott. Big Mile, high salute. Good to see you, Kevin. I see Bama X here. Bama X, it was great to meet you at the meet and greet. Good to talk a little bit of football with you. I appreciated the kind words of support after that Iowa football dagger to the heart, whatever the hell happened in that game. He says, "Morning, Broncos country. Good to see you, Bama X." I'm going to guess this is Lawrence, some Facebook user saying, "What's up, guys? Denver Broncos for life."
Or Ben.
Good to see Ben. Okay. Well, good to see whoever it is, Facebook user. God bless you. Thank you for joining us today. Richard Miles saying, "Hey, good to see you guys live for the first time in forever. Good to see you." We got Robot of Doom coming in. I know he's got some speed runs coming up here over on his channel. Good to meet you at the meet and greet. Says, "Good morning, Broncos country. With K-Jack gone for 4 games, I don't think we trade Simmons unless it's a can't say no offer. Thanks you guys for the signed poster also." Yeah, I mean, I gotta say the signing of stuff, my mom doesn't want my signature, so God bless. It's pretty cool to see you guys. No, it was really fun to talk with you. R of D, as I wrote on the poster for you. Wish I could have hung out more. That was the thing. It's like if I felt like I was being pulled so many directions, I wanted to talk to all you guys more than we did. But what do you think about Robot of Doom's comment here about the Kareem Jackson suspension impacting Justin Simmons' potential trade?
I think he's right, and frankly, I don't think you were going to get an offer for Justin Simmons that made it worthwhile anyway. What did the Philly just traded for a safety who has a similar resume, and it was about where I said it was going to be, Nick. It was 5th round pick and a 6th, somewhere in there. It was pretty low. It's not worth right now for you to get a day 3 pick for Justin Simmons. You're better off having him on the team and working out what you want to do with that contract next year. And that I was leaning to that before I even thought about Robot of Doom's point, which you're thin at safety anyway. Now you need him back there just for the bodies, the veteran body out there. So,
Yeah.
and you might say the same thing in reverse. Let's say Justin Simmons pulls a hamstring and he's out 4 to 6 weeks, and it's not Kareem Jackson. You got to hold on to who you've got now. You can't just go and replace them with practice squad players or draftees who haven't played a snap so far this season in Skinner. So I agree. I think this is a great point, and frankly, I don't see a lot of action at the trade deadline just because Jerry Jeudy would be the one. If I'm handicapping guys to go, I would say it might be Jerry Jeudy. Well, or Cortland Sutton has played his way into another round up, I believe. If he was a 4th, he might get a 3rd now.
I think that the Broncos will hold fast, asking for a round 3 pick for Justin Simmons. So the Titans trade Kevin Byard, longtime safety from, God, I want to say he played at like Middle Tennessee State or something. I remember him coming out. But he's traded the Eagles for a 5th round pick and a 6th round pick. They also get a safety, relatively young safety back in return in Terrell Edmonds. And the Eagles are taking on, I believe, completely the contract of Kevin Byard as well. So it's like we talk about. You can, I'll eat $5 million of that for one more round up.
Yeah, one more round. I'll buy a round for you. I'll send you a 4th if you'll do $5 million, if you'll pick up an extra 5.
Yes, exactly. So I think that this doesn't really change things for me on shopping Simmons. I still have asking for a round 3 pick, maybe even round 3 and a 5. And this trade makes me think that that's not going to happen. So I'm not trading him in that scenario. I think Simmons, I know there's been a lot of talk about, fire sale and cleaning house and the teams, the Deion Sanders approach, teams filled with a bunch of losers, guys who only know how to lose. So you probably need a clean sweep. I don't know if that's the move, but I've definitely heard that sentiment from Broncos country with a lot of the guys that have been here over the losing years. But I think the trade doesn't have any impact on it for me. If I can get what I want, then I'm going to be able to move him, but I don't see that coming.
I don't either, and I think the addition by subtraction moves have already been made.
Yeah.
This guy's gone. We don't care what we get. We're willing to cut him. I think those have already happened twice in Frank Clark and Randy Gregory. I don't see that happening again. Even if you consider Jerry Jeudy to be an attitude problem, and frankly, I don't think he has a real problem with his teammates. He might cause some embarrassment, at Dove Valley now and then, but it would take a good offer to trade Jerry Jeudy right now. Whereas you're waiving Frank Clark and you're willing to waive Randy Gregory. I think that's done. So you don't have a lot of valuable assets to trade. You're better off keeping these guys playing up the stretch because they're good professionals. They play hard. They win. They came back last week. I mean, they proved that they're not quitters is what I meant by that. Not that they're winning. Might only win 2 or 3 more games, but they're not quitters. They're not quitting on the Denver Broncos. They're not quitting on Broncos country. It's worth keeping them around for what the pittance you would get in return for a trade.
And just because they're not traded at the deadline doesn't mean the trade potential goes away, right? We have the offseason as well, where some guys can be moved. Could even be part of a package where, you're moving slightly up in the draft or something. So we'll see what happens with that. But again, if I'm still getting a 3rd-round pick plus for Justin Simmons, even though Kareem Jackson's gone, good luck, Delaren Turner-Yell. Good luck, J.L. Skinner. We're going to try to figure it out. But I don't see that happening for the Broncos. So we'll see. I do want to talk a little bit more about the trade deadline, of course, but want to say hello to some folks coming in. Jesse Fraley in the house, and good morning. I'm surprised it was only 4 games given the past history. Well, he's 1 hit away from maybe his year ending. So we'll see how that plays out for him. Pearl Heater says, good morning to you. Hope you're doing well. King of the North says, at this point, KJ can't pretend that these hits are legal or safe. Come on, at full speed, these hits are not okay. I do find it a little bit interesting, the juxtaposition about, Kareem Jackson's hit being dirty, and then you see the NFL tweeting out. Did you see the Devon Witherspoon hit this week?
Mm-mm.
I mean, he laid out a guy, ducked his head, and just absolutely obliterated him. I mean, fun hit for football, but it was ugly. And you see the NFL like, oh my God, look at this rookie killing it here. And it was dangerous head ducking pop of a defenseless receiver. So, I mean, they're not ever consistent. They're never going to be consistent. We see that week to week. I mean, the reffing is they're not consistent.
If we didn't have double standards, we wouldn't have standards at all. So no, I don't. I say it all the time, Nick. I don't mind an a-hole. I can't stand a hypocrite. Man, same rules apply to everybody, y'all. If you're going to do it this way, do it the same way for everybody. That's all I ask. It's consistency.
Mm-hmm. And don't praise it on the other end. If you don't say anything or don't suspend him, given the lack of repeat offense, that's one thing, but just the praise of it's wild. Albert Knopper says, good morning, guys. I'm glad y'all had a good time at the meet and greet. Sorry I missed it. I'm sorry you missed it too, Albert. No, it's okay. Hopefully we'll see you next time. And yeah, it was a really good time. We got our guy James Campbell coming in. The MHH great James says Broncos need to see what they have in PJ Locke. Honestly, think K-Jack's time in Denver should be done. You know what you have in him, but you need to see what other options on the roster are like. The one thing I will say about Kareem Jackson is that with how the players came to his defense, he has to be beloved in that locker room by his teammates. I mean, a lot of times you'll see guys, something happen and it's crickets. That was not the case. You had former teammates coming for him, current teammates coming for him, really supporting him. Not saying that we don't want to see more PJ Locke as long as he can stay healthy. But I do think that there is something to be said about the locker room and the like of Kareem Jackson in there. Even like players that never played with him were coming to support him on that. Now, granted, it's kind of the defenses in their own kind of fraternity with well, if you can't hit like this, then what's even the point? But I do think that hopefully you'll get a little bit more of a rotation out there, and it is time to see what you have in PJ Locke as well.
Yeah, and frankly, we were a little surprised in 2022 when Kareem Jackson was out as a free agent for a long time and then re-signed with the Denver Broncos. Mm-hmm. Fast forward to 2023, the same thing happens, and the reaction amongst the MHH crew was like, ugh. why can't we replace this guy? And again, Nick, you always hear me say, I'm not going to blame a guy for not being good enough. That's not his fault. It's the organization's fault for not having a better option. Caden Stearns is injury prone. PJ Locke has been okay. So you're going into this season with, as a number 2 safety, with a guy who hasn't played because of injury, a guy who's really old, and PJ Locke, who basically hasn't played a lot either. That's on Sean Payton. That's on George Payton. That you're thin at safety is not a surprise. And the thing is, Nick, that's not an expensive position. You should have been able to go out there and upgrade, get a little better insurance policy than, a 33-year-old, 185-pound former corner who's lost 3 steps, a guy who's played 75 snaps in his career because of injury.
Mm-hmm.
So that's on the organization. The problem you've got at safety right now.
It is. It is a relatively easy position to fill on the market or in the draft late. I mean, Delarian Turner-Yell right now, even though he's a 5th-round pick, doesn't look like he belongs out there. So that's, I would say, a soft miss. JL Skinner, 6th-round pick. I don't know if he has the athleticism to play in the back end in the NFL. So maybe, I mean, that's somebody who you'd hope would step up, but he's been a healthy scratch pretty much all season. So that's not great. And you lost Caden Stearns, but, kind of is who he is at this point. You can't depend on him. And next year, he's just a wild card. If you get anything from him, that'd be great, but can't depend on him. So now it's PJ Locke time. We'll see what happens to them. He also needs to stay healthy, but it will be interesting to follow with him and Justin Simmons back there. Hopefully both those guys can stay healthy. Gary Palmer, 999, says, good morning, Nick and Scott. I'm bummed that I had to leave Denver before the meet and greet. I am too. I was so sick I didn't want to inflict anybody. Well, that's actually okay. That's good call there. Happy to get the win. Go Broncos. Well, hopefully you're feeling better, Gary, and hopefully we can see you in the future. Hopefully you're feeling better as just in general, man. That stinks. Good call, though, man. Very, very not selfish. I'm being very protective of the wife right now, right? Pregnant. Really don't want her to get sick. So glad that you made that call and protecting other people around you.
Yeah, I'm doing some math right now for a question that came up. 32, 23, 22. So let me see if I can find this one. Gary, and sorry we missed you. I hope you're feeling better. You mentioned that you might not be able to make it next year. Make it next year. We'll see if we can figure that out. We might need to come to you. It's Colin. It was a question. So thank you for the support, Gary, and hope you made it back safe and you're feeling better. Colin Wood asked a question. He says, I wonder how our defense ranks if you take that Miami game out of the equation. If you remove the 70 points from the Miami game, you're averaging 24.5 points per game, which puts you in scoring at 22nd. So you're still 22nd in scoring, but the needle is heading in the right direction after the past few games against the Chiefs and the Packers. So 22nd in scoring defense if you were to take Miami out of the equation, but that's also leaving Miami on everybody else's schedule too. So we took Miami out of the league. That 70 is a little bit of an outlier, but you're still bottom 3rd in scoring defense right now without that 70 points, which it's not good enough. It's not good enough. Getting better, willing to see more, but not ready to, hand Vance Joseph a contract extension.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's impossible to say that they haven't improved through the first 4 weeks to the last 4 weeks. They've been a lot better. I think even game by game. Now, granted, the Jordan Love and that Packers team was not very good. I was not super impressed with their weapons, Jordan Love in general, with some questionable decisions. But they look much better, specifically in the back 7, just more of a cohesive unit. I think Vance Joseph kind of understands what the assignments need to be, and the guys I think are playing a little bit better football on the back end. Now, we got the Chiefs coming to town and Patrick Mahomes, who just threw 10,000 yards, and Travis Kelce blowing kisses after 20 touchdown games. But yeah, it's I think they are playing better. They're still a well below average unit. You can see the talent on the field. You can see the holes in the field, but they're not historically bad. I mean, through the first 4 games, it was DVOA saying this is the worst defense of all time. Mm-hmm. That's normalized some. Defense is much more volatile and fluctuates. It was always going to regress some to the mean, just like we saw the Browns last week. Oh, this is a historically good defense. Gave up 38 points to the Gardner Minshew Colts. That's some regression. Yeah, that's some regression to the mean there. But The Broncos are not going to end up with the worst defense in football. They're going to end up with a bottom 10 unit. I am pretty confident in that. Brandon Williams, talking about a bottom 10 defense, says, thoughts about rookie cornerback Riley Moss being a healthy scratch. Thanks, guys. I think that Moss, with that hernia-like injury that where he missed almost the entirety of entirety of training camp, missed most of the season so far, and now he's a healthy scratch. I think he's just behind physically, mentally, and unfortunately with the rookie, when you have an injury like that, it does seem like you get maybe a redshirt season until like maybe the last 4 games of the year. Now we're one injury away, but I think they're probably slow playing it with him just because he missed so much time.
Yeah, you want him practicing. You don't want him out, and you can't drop him to the practice squad because he would have to pass through waivers and he'd never make it. So he's on the 53, and he might be healthy, but that doesn't mean he's ready. So again, Nick explained it really well. But again, you're like, well, why would he be on the 53? Why is he? Because you can't just put him on the practice squad. In order to move a guy to the practice squad, you got to cut him first. Have them pass through waivers if they're eligible for that, or or someone else can put a claim. And there's no way you can do that with Riley Moss. So he's on the 53, so he can practice and start making strides towards getting ready. But I've had this discussion before, and it's semantics, Nick. Well, if he's not 100%, then he shouldn't play. Well, the only way you can get to be 100% is by playing. So, you can pass it. And we said that about Javonte Williams. If he's not 100%, I don't want him to play. You can pass every physical test known to man, and you're not going to be a 100% peak performance until you get some games under your belt. And that's a running back who's a third-year guy in the league. Riley Moss just might be a healthy scratch. He might not be 100% healthy, but you want him out there because he's not allowed to practice or do anything while he's on IR.
It's also possible he's a missed evaluation. I mean, let's just call it as it is. At this point, we haven't seen him. It's too early to say that definitively, but he's a guy who played in a very interesting system at Iowa. Was not asked do a lot beyond, press bail, off coverage kind of stuff. And maybe he's not looking great in practice so far. And I can say this being, wearing my Iowa shirt right now, that a good amount of Iowa cornerbacks that have been drafted over the last, 3-4 years have not been very good in the league because of the system that they play puts them in a very advantageous situation. I guess I should take that back. The boundary corners have not been good. The slots/safeties have been pretty good. So we'll see what happens with Riley Moss. Scott, you remember the time. It was kind of a weird situation because I didn't want to badmouth Moss coming in. I thought he was a good prospect, but the process of trading up for Moss, I hated immediately. Trading pick 108 to move up to, 80, 88, something like that, and giving up a future third in the process. You're giving up 2 almost top 100 picks for a single mid-third rounder. Yeah. I mean, I hated that at the time, especially the team that did not have a lot of, capital in the bank to give up both those dart throws when drafting mid-third round cornerbacks is already a, grab bag a little bit. Didn't love the process. We'll still see. I mean, maybe Riley Moss hits and ends up being a starting caliber cornerback, and the Broncos beat the odds of trading those 2 picks to go get a guy. But we'll see. Right now, it doesn't look great, but we don't have much actual data to go on other than the fact that the Broncos gave up 108 and what looks to be a pretty good third-round pick, whether it be the Saints or the Broncos pick, over to the, I think, Seahawks as well for Riley Moss.
And that one doesn't math very well, like you're saying. You got to hit. If you make a move like that, by God, you better hit, because it's hard to justify with the math on that one, as you were saying.
It's just there's a weird thing with a lot of teams and overconfidence in their own analysis, right? You're giving up. Just play the math there. Pick 108. That's an early 4th round pick. Typically, players in the top, there's like a huge drop off after like pick 115, 125 in terms of value. But 108, you should be able to get a running back there. I know Ade was around that area. Man, he'd be nice to have for the pass rush. And then a 3rd round pick on top of it. I mean, for a team also that really shouldn't have been like gearing up and going for it, right? Like you shouldn't have been all in on this season. So I don't know. We'll see how that process plays out. But right now, it's the investment looks a little short-sighted.
Yeah, and I had somebody, when you and I were having this discussion about trading back and getting more picks, and one of our more cynical commenters was saying, all these draft guys always want more picks because they think they can't miss. Wrong. It's exactly the opposite, dude.
Mm-hmm.
We want more picks because we know there are going to be misses, and the more chances, it's basic probability. I could do the math for you, but I won't. But the more players you have, the less chance you have of missing. The more chances you have of getting a hit. It's if I've got a 50% chance of hitting in the first round and a 40% chance in the second round, give me 2 second-round picks. The math works out a lot better that I'm going to get a player out of that. So, yeah, the math on that, like I said, you best not miss when you make a trade. You make a trade like that. Who's not missing for us? Rob coming in. He says, "Good morning, gents. Good to have you back together." It's great to be back together. It's much more relaxed for me. I can just let Nick drive, and I can just interrupt him every 30 seconds instead of trying to come up with stuff on my own. Always the best MHH team. Well, I appreciate that. If we finish 4-9, who are likely draft targets? And the 16 to 17 games has really gotten tough on Rob. I'm like 4-9. Let's see. You'd be 4-13 actually. Who are likely?
He's saying like the last. I think there's
the last, but there's not 13 games left. There's only 10 left.
Well, then I don't know what's going on.
Yeah. So 4 through 9 draft.
The draft order
making sense.
Yes.
You finish 4 through 9. Who are the likely draft targets? Does Penix come up that high? Is he going to be a top 10 guy?
No,
JJ McCarthy, would he come up that high?
Possible.
Mm-hmm.
I think McCarthy's one that you want to keep an eye on right now. If you just watch him, I'm going to give a comparison here that's going to send shivers down Broncos country spines here, but it's just purely from a traits and aesthetic perspective. But when I watch JJ McCarthy, I see good Vanderbilt Jay Cutler. I think the arm is live, Scott.
Jay Cutler had a phenomenal arm. He just, like I said, now I'm interrupting Nick again. I always said he's the dumbest smart guy I ever watched play this game. He got into the bad habit, and I used to blame it on being at Vanderbilt, where he was by far the best player there, and he got into the habit of forcing throws, trying to make things happen. That didn't leave when he went to when he got to the NFL. He was still doing stupid crap, like a first 5 years John Elway, like a first 5 years Brett Favre, guys that have those rockets for arm, that put too much trust in them and make a lot of mistakes. That was Jay Cutler his whole career.
Also, I don't know if Jay Cutler truly loved the grind of the game as much, got by with a lot of that natural talent. But I'm just speaking purely from a talent perspective. I think JJ McCarthy is a very loose and twitchy athlete for the position. You see him on some of those rollouts that they have at Michigan with their cheat code offensive line that they have right now. And it looks really good on those bootlegs, different arm slots. And there's a few, deep outs that he can just rip, absolute lasers. So I keep an eye on JJ McCarthy. Obviously, Caleb Williams is he's worse this year than he was last year. So maybe he's not the slam dunk number one. Drake May's having a pretty good year there, but keep an eye out for JJ McCarthy. He could end up being a top 10 pick. Bruce Feldman was on, I think it was the Rich Eisner show this last week, and he said that there's a team out there that actually has JJ McCarthy, their quarterback one, over Williams in May. So there is love for him and the traits and the tools that he has. We'll see how the season plays out. He hasn't played anybody of real value yet, so we'll see if some of those throws that he's making right now can hold against a Penn State, against an Ohio State playoffs. Who knows? As far as 4 through 9, if you're picking at 4, you're going to have the option of one of Olu Fashanu, left tackle from Penn State, or Marvin Harrison Jr. For some reason, let's say that Olu goes before Marvin Harrison Jr. I would probably sit there at 4 and take one of those guys. I think there's an obvious slash after the top 2 quarterbacks and those guys, unless JJ McCarthy rises up.
But you'd take JJ McCarthy at 4, wouldn't you?
I would consider it. If he ends up being that guy and turns out well. I think right now he's one that I just have, highlighted. I need to see what it looks like against better competition because the tools are there. What does it look like when he actually has to quarterback in a somewhat disadvantageous situation? Because have not seen that so much. And outside of the Bowling Green game so far, JJ McCarthy has been really, really good, but he just hasn't had to do much. I mean, he's played 10 fourth quarter snaps this year because Michigan has been dominating so much. So want to see what it looks like against better competition. Alt is definitely an option there. I think you kind of mixed up Olu and Alt into one name there, Rob. Left tackle from Notre Dame. Bowers would be really interesting with Sean Payton, given how much 12 and 21 personnel they like to use. He's a different kind of player than a Kyle Pitts. He's much more of almost like a hybrid between Kyle Juszczyk and George Kittle. I think you're going to use him in slot. I think you're going to use him in line. I think some NFL draft analysts that I really respect say that Bowers in the NFL could be utilized like a Cooper Kupp, where he's almost detached in the slot as much as he is going to be in line. So I would be interested in Bowers. After that, maybe, Keon Coleman's having an incredible year for Florida State. Malik Neighbors, LSU. You got a couple edge rushers as well. Latu from UCLA. Dallas Turner from Alabama. But we'll see how it plays out. It's going to be interesting to see where the Broncos end up picking. But I think at 4, unless you're in love with that third quarterback there, it's whoever remains from Marvin Harrison Jr. or Olu Fashanu.
All right. And again, you like to come out of this with a quarterback. Maybe you can sneak a guy in the second round. Maybe.
Yep.
That's where
you don't have a second round pick though.
That's right. Never mind. Maybe make some deals. So we'll see. The trade deadline coming up. Maybe you have a second round pick come November 1st. You never know. And Jonathan Follick has a question about the procedural aspects of trades in the NFL draft, and coming in with a super chat. Thank you, sir. He says, morning, guys. With all the trade talk, could moving on from any of these players garner comp picks, or would that not work since most of them are still under contract next year? Thanks, gents. No, they'd have to leave as a free agent in order for you to get comp picks, and you couldn't sign an equitable free agent. So you lose Draymond Jones as a pretty high dollar free agent, but you sign Zach Allen. There goes your comp pick. So those cancel each other out. You have to be sellers and not buyers come free agency as well for you to be compensated for who you lose, which is kind of baloney anyway. I mean, they're free agents again, this forced parity thing. We're not going to pay our players, so we want compensation for them. No, tough. Pay your players. But on that note, what you're looking for your high dollar guys right now, for your veterans, is salary cap relief. Those are the big ones where you could go out there and you would be buyers on the market, which would cancel out any type of free agent that you were able to get if you lost. Josie Jewell is one of your, I start looking at free agents, Nick, and he might be the top guy that's going to be a free agent next year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you don't have many that are going to be there without being cut. And you do not get comp picks for players you release before their contract is over. Mm-hmm. You also do, if you sign somebody who was cut by another team, they do not factor into the compensatory formula. So that's one reason, seems like every freaking year, the 49ers and the Ravens own like half the compensatory picks. They seem to mostly go after guys who are released or signed after there's a deadline where the comp picks don't matter anymore. Or they're not, the signings are not attributed to the formula. But yeah, right now the Broncos are not going to get any 2024 comp picks based on who they signed in 2023. At least I believe that's what the projection is. And other than Josie Jewell, you're not really losing anybody of value this cycle that I can think of off the top of my head that might garner a large contract. So yeah, no comp picks coming. The other way you can get comp picks is if you have a minority front office person or a coach that is elevated to either general manager or head coach. So let's say the Broncos go on an absolute tear and have the number 1 defense in the entire NFL the rest of the season. That's playing fantasy world. And Vance Josephs gets hired to be a head coach somewhere. I know, guys, don't log off, but I'm just saying this is an example. Then you'd get a 2025 compensatory pick. So it'd be a year delayed, but take the fantasy hat off, turn off the Xbox. That's not happening this cycle with Vance Joseph.
No, and you start looking at the money, and the Broncos are now $21 million over the cap going into next year. There will be some movement, which still makes me think, Nick, you got Russell Wilson for one more season. We'll see. And maybe you have that guaranteed contract for 2025, but that's still better than the dead cap hit you would have to take if you move on from him this year. But Jewell is $7 million. Unfortunately, he doesn't actually count towards that. He's already factored into that 20. Garrett Bolles is plus 16 million if you move on for him. Let's see here. Justin Simmons is also $15 million. So we're talking about 31 there. Cortland Sutton is 10. there's 41. Tim Patrick is 10. There's 51. Ben Powers you can actually move on from and take a cap hit, but you get some money back. DJ Jones, who I don't think you want to move, but there's a trade asset we don't actually talk about much, Nick, is next year his number is 13 on 3, so there's 10 there. You don't want to do that. I think you're absolutely trying to move Jerry Jeudy. There's 13. So what am I up to? About $70 million. You got to replace those guys, but in a rebuilding year, if you have to hit the nuke button, you're replacing them with veterans and just trying to survive this season with low dollar veterans and draft picks.
Yeah. I mean, not to be too dark on this, but I was thinking about this. I haven't put this out in the universe yet, but let's say there's a reality where the Broncos do hit the nuke button on Russell Wilson's contract, do have to move on from a lot of these guys, and it is really 2024 than a bounce off the floor hard year. I mean, it could be even worse talent-wise than this season, which I know people are like, oh, but how is that possible? It is possible, folks. You're not even heading the brunt of the Russell Wilson cap hit right now, and he's not playing like a top 10 quarterback, and he's about to get paid like a top 4 quarterback. So that could be rough. If you move on from him, you don't get that young quarterback, or maybe even you do get that young quarterback. I wouldn't be shocked at all if your starting quarterback week 1, 2024 is Jarrett Stidham, especially if you are a really bad roster around that quarterback spot. Maybe you want to protect that quarterback from some bad habits or anything, or you took a developmental guy. That's a reality out there for the Broncos going forward. And I know that's not one that a lot of people would look forward to, but with where the team is at from a draft pick perspective, a salary cap perspective, and the direction of Russell Wilson roster, we are not out of the darkness just yet. I don't even know if you can fully see the light at the end of the tunnel just yet, because that salary cap implications would be over 2024 and 2025.
Let's say the Denver Broncos get their quarterback in this draft. Okay. I was asked this question. I want to see what you said. I have a feeling.
Who is it? It matters who it is for me.
It's one or two. It's Caleb Williams or Drake May.
You get one or two. Okay.
Yeah, you get one or two. You get one or two, and you get the franchise guy at quarterback. So when I mean, like, and as Albert says, yeah, we enjoy trading down because it's like bingo. The more cards you can color, the more chances you have to win. Now there's probability in there. The probability says, and with a small enough sample size, I can prove any points you want, but I should never draft this guy here. Look at this guy. The probability is first round draft picks succeed more than second round draft picks, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's basic math. But yeah, the probability, there's an exponential curve. You pay so much more for guys in the first round than you do later on that I can get 5 or 6 more picks for a first down the line and increase my probability of getting one player. Yeah. So I agree with you here, Albert, almost, with stipulations. Now, I was asked this last week after I got confused of towing the company line and being a sunshine pumper of sorts. That's me, Mr. Sunshine.
Oh, I know you, Scott.
I was asked straight out, Scott, when do you think this team can be competitive? And I had just gone through, you just come off the loss to, was it the Jets in week 6, and you're sitting there with a number 3 pick. And I said, okay, look at the schedule. There's a chance you could only have one more win here. You're absolutely in play for it. Let's assume you get your quarterback. How quickly do you think this team could be competitive for a playoff spot?
2026.
That's what I said.
Yep.
Exactly. And it's for the same reasons. The math on the salary cap. The salary cap's a myth. No, it's not. When you've got money tied up into aging, underperforming players, the salary cap becomes very, very real. And that's the problem that the Denver Broncos are going to have. And you can cuss the salary cap math for the next couple of years if this thing doesn't just turn around through hard work and coaching over the course of the 2023 season.
Yeah. Broncos are in such a weird limbo spot. I mean, there's obvious to see. I think the coaching is competent. And that's some of the design that I got to see from the, aerial view of my seats. Beautiful out there, and the run game's starting to go. I really think that Sean Payton, the schemer and offensive designer, is great, and that's going to win you some games just based off of that. But the talent and the ability to add talent is limited until 2026. And you have, again, it's easy to say in hindsight, but these big contracts you're going out and getting and trading future top 100 picks for the 80th overall pick in a cornerback. It's stuff that like the self-awareness of where the roster actually was. And I totally get it with Russell Wilson. And it's, again, easy to say in hindsight, but those kind of moves just put off the future flexibility where when you actually do have the pieces, you can go for it. So it's going to be interesting to follow for the Broncos, and we'll see
You
what
almost had
happens
to
with.
throw $1 in the side jar.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're talking about this like an inevitability, Scott. It's kind of the vibe I got talking with people who are more in the know than me, but there is a chance that Russell Wilson is here after this season. I know that you keep saying that they won't do it after this year, but there's a $37 million guaranteed.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm
Okay, I feel
saying
like
it's still financially best, I believe, that Russell Wilson is on the roster next season. That's your financially best option.
it cost you so much to do that because that guarantee that kicks in.
I know, but it's still less. The money he gets next year plus that guarantee is still less than his dead cap number for next year.
I'd have to look at it again
because
because
it's like 85, $89 million straight up dead cap next year. And his cap next year is like 35 with the $37 guaranteed is like $72 million. It's about the same, but it's actually a little less. And I might be able to trade some of that money where if I have if I just take the dead cap, I won't be able to. I might be able to trade him and pick up some of that salary money. With dead cap, dude, you're just screwed. You're eating it. You're done.
I'll have to look at the numbers at some point, Scott, because I'm looking at Over the Cap. They did a really awesome article last year when Russell Wilson was playing dreadful on moving on from Wilson. And because of how that $37 million guarantee hits for 2025, the dead cap hit is actually, from what I'm looking at here, less if you move on from him after this season versus if you move on from him after 2024. So if you move on from him post June 1st designation, this year, the 2024 dead cap hit would be 35.4 million, and then 2025 would be 49.6. But when that 37,
which is 75 million.
yes. So, and then if you do it in 2025, when that 37 million becomes guaranteed on the 5th day of free agency 2024, your dead cap hit for 2025 is 55 million. And the 2026 dead cap hit is 31 million.
So it's 85. So it's within $6 million or so
but it's a year later as well, because then you're taking it in 2026 on top of it. So I think if it is happening, based on if we were going to believe the article here from Jason Fitzgerald at Over the Cap, and good follow, Jason_OTC, if you're curious about cap stuff. He does really good work. But if it's happening, I think it's happening this offseason based on that weird language with that 2025 37 million becoming guaranteed. And this is assuming that they can exercise the post June 1st, not execute it, but exercise it prior to the 5th day of the league year next year, which I think you can do. Yeah, I
think you can too. You can designate it as a post June 1st transaction. So we're not picking this up. We're doing this. I think you can too. You have to pay them up until then or something, but usually you get paid on game day, game weeks anyway. You only get paid during the season anyway.
And I'll post this article in the chat right now, just because, it is very heavy in the finance kind of things.
There is no good answer is the problem, Nick. We're talking just a couple $1 million here or there. You're looking at a record dead cap number by a lot, no matter how you do it.
Hence when are you competitive? 2026. There's a possible, 7 teams in the playoffs. Sean Payton, maybe you could, scrap together. Ball bounces your way a few games. The Broncos were ball bouncing their way a few times this season where they could be, 3-3 right now. The first 2 weeks could have been easily wins for them. Jets game probably could have been a win as well. But alas, here we are. Troy Bauer. Troy, it was really great to meet you at the meet and greet and talk with you for a bit.
Confirm his last name pronunciation, because we say it different on every show.
Troy Boo. Just for the Halloween season.
TB.
Yeah. I did not ask him, but got to talk a little bit about the dog. Got to meet your stepson as well. Good guy. Really thank you for coming and joining and asking me about my hikes. I love that. No, thank you, Troy. So great to talk with you. He says, thanks again for the meet and greet. Is Drew Sanders getting better? Drew Sanders has packages out there when the Broncos are in base. I think he had 4 to 6 snaps in this last game, Scott. 4? Okay. See, sometimes I remember things. I did recognize him out there. It's hard to say that he is getting better, just given the limited sample size, but I would imagine that hopefully he's getting a little bit more comfortable with the scheme and starting to understand his assignments a little bit better. That Miami game, he looked like he was swimming the entire game. I mean, what a terrible first game to go against with all the motions and the orbit stuff and the, kicking the wide receiver. I mean, I can't imagine a harder first matchup for a linebacker given the assignments and having to know what you do when guys move based on what guys are doing around you. But I don't know if he's doing better, but I would assume so.
Coach better.
Yeah.
Run a dime. Something. And you might have had problems with your defensive secondary numbers as well as part of the problem, but put Singleton in the middle, use Sanders as an edge rusher, and make up for that with with defensive backs. You don't have a hammer type. Mostert's a good running back, but they're still all about speed.
Mm-hmm.
And I want a base dime. If I'm that bad, rather than trying to count on a rookie linebacker out there who's still relatively new to the position, period, that's not on Drew Sanders. That's on the Denver Broncos for not having a better option than Drew Sanders at the time, and for putting him in a spot where he had absolutely no chance of success.
Yeah.
So is he getting better, Troy? You'd hope so.
Yep.
Through experience. He's being used less. That's how I would put it. He is being counted on and used less. He went from 57 snaps against Chicago to 13 against Kansas City to 4 at home against Green Bay. So he is being counted on less and less as the season goes on.
And it's possible, we haven't talked to me a little bit about the trade. I think the Justin Simmons one's not happening. I think right now, Scott, if you made me have to guess the future of Garrett Bolles, I think it's more likely he gets a new contract versus being released outright. From people I've spoken with, they've actually been pretty pleased with Garrett Bolles. We'll see where the Broncos are drafting and what that means.
What kind of contract? Because his base salary is $16 million next year. And is he going to take a pay cut?
I think it's not an outright pay cut. I think it's something where the salary cap the hit is lowered next year. So it's essentially an extension, but you get the bonus. So he's paid immediately because of the signing bonus.
Oh, I know,
but that's hit
his
a little
base,
later.
You will take that $16 million base salary and you'll turn it into a signing bonus.
Yep.
Okay. What is his average on his last contract? His average was 4 years, $68 million, which comes out to about 17 million a year. You going to be able to come up with a contract that averages him 17 million a year over 3 years? 3 years, $51 million with a $16 million signing bonus?
I think they probably can do 4 years, and it would be something similar to what it is now. And the one thing that, again, people I've spoken to, Scott, is that
33-year-old?
That's okay for an offensive tackle.
He's 32 next year. He's 32 next year.
I think that's okay for an offensive tackle. And also, everybody's expecting the salary cap to explode with the Amazon YouTube money. I think we're going to see unprecedented growth in the salary cap over the next 4 to 6 years. So I think Garrett Bolles is playing his way to a new contract, with the contract being lesser going forward beyond that. Unless somebody wants to give up a second-round pick for him or something like that. He might be worth the second-round pick right now, given the limitations or the limited quality offensive tackles that are out there. But I think right now he's playing more so to being extended, which is shocking to me. And if you guys go back to listen to me in the offseason, I was like, oh, man, you might need to bench Garrett Bolles now. But he's been playing good football. I mean, when the tape proves the contrary, I'll be the first one to say, nope, wrong. Let's backtrack that one. He's playing good football right now overall. The other tackle spot, that's an issue, especially the contract. But we'll see. We got Facebook user coming in saying the more you talk about it, George Paton has done a super poor job. Do you think he's back next year? Scott, what do you think?
I'll address the first part. I didn't even think of the second part. Do you think he's back next year? No way. Dead man walking. He's been a lame duck since Sean Payton walked in the door, as far as I'm concerned. Mm-hmm. And where I had given him props up until then was in salary cap management. Now, that went out the window with the Russell Wilson extension. He's going to have to fall on the sword for that one, even if it was done at the beck and call of the Walton Penner group, who said, we want to get this done now. I don't know how much involved he was. Any move that has been made after Sean Payton has walked through the door, I do not put on George Payton's ledger. I just don't. I don't think he is an acting general manager. I think Sean Payton is. And I've said this before, Nick, the biggest liability for Sean Payton, the coach, will be Sean Payton, the general manager. He's got to get somebody in there. It's a different skill set. It's a different job. He's got to get somebody in there that he trusts in order to turn over and have a legit personnel, salary cap, analytics guy in there building that roster.
Yeah, not a puppet government or a shadow state or whatever, if you will, in that front office, which, yeah, it's weird. The coach is always concerned about winning in the now, but the general manager in the front office needs to be thinking about the health of the roster over the next 3 to 5 seasons. And they're always at a little bit at odds. And if one has too much power, it can have some issues. I would rather have the general manager have more power, to be completely honest, in that roster perspective. I mean, you got Howie Roseman definitely calling the shots there in Philly, and he'll constantly just draft positions of value in the first round and then trade day 3 capital for running backs, safeties, linebackers, and looks pretty darn good out there. Granted, hitting on a day 2 quarterback helps a lot too. Guys, we got to start wrapping up here, but I want to say hello to Keith Brugman is in the house. Good morning to you, Keith. Hopefully you're doing pretty darn well. We appreciate you always, and hopefully we see you at a meet and greet sometime in the near future. Greg Smith in the house. Aloha to you. He says, good morning, Broncos for breakfast. We got Gatorade Gaming in here saying you like that. David Burkhart coming in here saying my wish list is simple. Beat the Chiefs at home. We'll start turning the page here probably Thursday. Looking forward to the Chiefs game. But I think a lot of Broncos country, if they lose every game the rest of the season, but beat the Chiefs and reset that streak that's going on right now, I think a lot of Broncos country would be okay with that. I'm not expecting to beat the Chiefs by any means, but we'll see what happens. I mean, Chiefs looked really good against the Chargers, but man, that talk about a dead man walking, Scott. Brandon Staley, the Chargers team, perennial underachievers at this point. Man, going to be rough. Let's see, we got the JJ McCarthy ones here. JJ McCarthy sounds like the name of a ventriloquist dummy. A little bit, yeah. Dominique saying Jake Plummer was better than Jay. Jake Plummer played better quarterback than Jay, but Jay was more gifted as a player. So we'll see what happens. It does seem like
the physical gifts and the moxie. The problem is that you can't measure the moxie.
Yeah. Yeah, without a doubt. And Michael coming up with a name here that I've mentioned quite a few times. Jeff Ireland, a name to watch out for the Broncos general manager. I think if Sean Payton had his druthers, Jeff Ireland would be very high. But while Sean Payton is running the football side of things, the operations and the team itself is still very much the general manager. And maybe they see how things are going this year or whatever. Maybe they hire somebody who is more equivalent to Sean Payton versus, just giving Sean Payton full reign. I don't know what the dynamic will be with Sean Payton and the ownership group in terms of the general manager hire, because make no mistake, the ones signing the checks are the ones who are truly in charge here. So maybe it's not just hiring whoever Sean Payton wants.
And I agree. Andrew Lampy coming in with some stars on Facebook. He says, good morning. Good morning to you. Hope all is well. Going to enjoy this win before we get toyed with by the chefs again. You never know. And again, Nick, it was a close game, and that's the problem with screwing around and not putting a team away. The Chiefs felt comfortable, but there you are at a 1-score game, so you've been close. You've played them tough. It's going to end eventually. It can't go on forever. And as Nick always says, and I think it's a fun play on words, is every day is one day closer that the streak ends. Don't know when that is, but you are one day closer to that day that it ends.
Yeah. Yeah, it's certainly possible. And we'll have a chance to talk about a lot of the Russell Wilson stuff. I'm now catching up on the comments when we were going in about the contract as well. Again, the dead cap hit is just significantly bigger based on what I saw. If you keep him after this season, and it means that then you are not free from the contract until 2027 while paying more. So that is a tough ask. I think, honestly, if you are about sitting the rookie quarterback, it probably is Jarrett Stidham as your starter next year. And then, 6 weeks left, 4 weeks left. Maybe then you make that transition. I wouldn't even be against doing that with the first overall pick next year, given the state of the roster around the quarterback position right now, if you are tearing it down. But we'll have a lot of time to talk about hypotheticals and see how everything plays out. We got Michael Ronquillo. Great show today. Nick and Scott on Broncos for breakfast. Go Broncos. Good to see you, Michael. And guys, Kareem Jackson suspended 4 games. Broncos kind of lose one potential landing spot for Justin Simmons. We'll see how it plays out. And Scott, I agree with you. I don't think we're going to see a super duper active trade deadline here from the Broncos. I think if I had to put odds on one guy being traded, it'd be Jerry Jeudy. Do you have an opinion if there was a second guy most likely to be traded, who would it be?
Cortland Sutton.
You say Cortland Sutton. I'm going to go with Josie Jewell.
Mhm.
I think that Josie's played well enough that there might be some interest for him out there. I think both the Bills and the Cowboys are looking for linebackers, and I don't think it would cost very much while moving on some salary cap for the Broncos. It would also create an opportunity for Drew Sanders, who, given where the Broncos are at right now, probably would be okay with him getting some snaps and experience. I think Josie Jewell might have. I mean, you're talking about like a 6th or 7th rounder, but I
You're
think
still
that's
talking about
a
a trade.
possibility.
You know,
Yes.
what would it be? And I just think you've got a little bit better depth at wide receiver, and I think that Cortland Sutton is more valuable at the wide receiver position than the inside linebacker. You're going to have to eat a lot of his contract. Nobody's going to pay it, so you're going to eat the contract. Send you a 3rd or 4th round pick, and he can be a really good 2 or 3 on a contending team. So
Yeah.
I just think he's a more valuable asset. So I would go Cortland Sutton.
Definitely possible. I think Cortland Sutton could be an awesome number 2 for this team. And I think that Mims can be a really good number 3. And if you can get a 1, and the team is just missing, like that number 1 player at so many positions. We're like, oh yeah, the guys we have, they'd be good if they were one spot lower, but alas, here we are. One here for you, Scott. Flazzy Fi, most improved player so far, Lloyd Cushenberry. He's been solid this year. Has he earned a second contract? First one, is he the most improved player on this team so far this year, in your opinion?
I mean, I think you got to go Nick Bonito on that one.
Yeah.
And some of that's just based on, well, no, I'll keep going from this one. Some of that with Nick Bonito is first year to second year. But I think the most improved player from last year to this year is Russell Wilson.
Russell Wilson. Yep.
is where I would go with that one. I think he's the one that's playing exponentially better, where I think that Lloyd Cushenberry has gone from liability to okay. It's just that the bar has been set so low that okay is starting to look really good. If you don't believe me, type in Dalton Reisner into Twix and see the responses that the Minnesota Vikings had to his game last night. It's like a revelation.
They think
Because Ezra Cleveland had been playing so bad at left guard that Dalton Reisner's okay game. He was okay. He wasn't, is like, oh my God, this guy is a miracle. He's the best thing I've ever seen. He was moving laterally well, and he was getting in combination blocks well, and he was getting pushed back when he was one-on-one with defensive tackles. It was the good version of Dalton Reisner. Lloyd Cushenberry, at the end of his rookie contract, got a bump up to $3 million. Do I want to pay him that type of money as a raise? A 3-year deal at 12? No, I don't. I want an upgrade there, and I might offer him close to the same money, but I want significant competition in there. And I still hear Sean Payton saying good things about Alex Forsyth.
That's exactly it, Scott. Your starting center next year is probably somebody that's already on the roster. It's either going to, I would be shocked if it's not Luke Wattenberg or Alex Forsyth. I've heard good things about them behind the scenes. They are, and the Broncos, unfortunately, with the cap stuff we keep talking about, you talk about, we need to get another center. We need another safety. Oh, we need another cornerback. You're not going to have the resources to fill every single one of those spots. So some guys that are already on the roster are going to be put in those positions. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if Forsyth or Wattenberg are your starting center next year. And that's not because Cushenberry hasn't been much better this season. It's just because they can't, you can't have 4 of your 5 offensive linemen paid second contracts with your quarterback getting paid as much as he's about to get paid next season, whether he's on the roster or not.
Right.
So
as much money as your quarterback is going to be costing against your salary cap.
Yes, the quarterback position. So we'll see. We got Michael Ronquillo. Great show today, Nick and Scott on Broncos for breakfast. Go Broncos. Go Michael. Go Broncos for breakfast. Go Scott. Thank you so much for holding down the fort. We are going to get out of here after we say hello to Patrick, our guy coming in here. Aloha, gents. And also, never mind. I was going to say hello to this Twitch person, but that seems like an ad. So never mind, Twitch person. We only like Robot of Doom. Appreciate everyone coming in. Make sure you're following Scott and I on Twitter. Scott is at Scout Kennedy. I am at Nick Kendell MHH. Also, make sure you guys are following us at BFB_pod as well as at Mile High Huddle. If you haven't done so yet, join our Facebook groups at facebook.com/Mile High Huddle as well as facebook.com/Mile High Huddle pod. And as that ticker says there underneath, if you're joining us on YouTube today, please subscribe to Mile High Huddle, like this episode specifically, and share it on your social media platforms. It was fun to be on the other end, chipping in a little bit in the waiting in the airport, listening to you, Scott, but definitely prefer sitting here next to you virtually so we can talk. I got to say, you say something on the show when I'm just listening out in space and I'm like talking back to you like I'm actually a part of it. So
what are you talking about, man?
I don't know if I froze there or if you froze,
and
but
I'm still interrupting you is the thing.
yeah, I was talking. No, that's okay. You got something to say, and if you don't say it right now, you'll forget. I'm the same
forget
way.
it. It's not only my 3/4 ADD. I'm old. I want to say thank you to Michael Rankio for coming in a couple of times with the stars and the support you show for us. Mark Schrader, great to see you again. Gary Palmer, Brandon Williams, Rob Bucksbaum, Jonathan Follick, Troy, and Andrew. Thank you for the support that y'all have shown Broncos for breakfast today, gentlemen. We certainly appreciate you.
Yeah, shout out to you guys. Nick was the weird guy at the airport. I always am. You can just get rid of the airport. But appreciate everybody coming in. It was really great to see a lot of you at the meet and greet, and fun to see my first victory and draft position, whatever. It's hard to win in the NFL. I feel good for a lot of those guys in there on that team getting that win. We will see you again. I'll see you again tonight on Building the Broncos with Carl, and then we'll see you tomorrow morning as well on Forging the Falcons. If you're curious to hear about draft or NFL in general or whatever the heck's going on with the Falcons red zone offense down there in Tampa. My God, Scott, I heard yakety sax playing every time you got within the one.
Here you go. Just take it.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Yeah, you win a game with 3 red zone turnovers, 2 coming at the 1. Your team played pretty well.
Yeah. Yep. So we'll talk later, guys. Have a great one. Make sure you continue to choose kindness and compassion, as I always like to say, and go Broncos.